And I sat up in the middle, and it probably wasn't that night, it might have been a night or two later. I sat up in bed in the middle of the night, and I was like, great, I own a sand plant. I mean, how hard can this be, right? So I turn around, and I go racing into the plant the next morning. Meanwhile, I mean, I'm trying to work for my father, who expects a return on his sand and gravel plant. I'm trying to do this all on nights and weekends, and keeping him happy at the same time, which was a trick. But, you know. So we went and I put the sand and I start mixing the sand with the clay. And I'm in there and I'm mixing it in the lab and trying to put it all together, and it just looked like, oh, it looked terrible. I mean, I was like, there's nobody that's ever gonna buy this. And I'd throw it down and I'd leave. And you know, then I tried mixing it with, I knew I had to put sand with it. And the worst part is, in between all of that, I had this doggone job I had to deliver a product for. So necessity is the mother of all invention, right? I mean, you had to produce something, because I've already told them, you know, my employees will tell you, I'm famous for telling anybody, yes, we can pull this off. Luckily, I have about 60 people behind me now that make the magic happen, and I just stand up and, you know, say, yes, we can definitely do it. And it drives a few people in the company absolutely batty crazy. But so, you know, we started trying to mix these. We had this product we had to make. And I started trying to figure out how, okay, I found the clay and I have the sand. Now the next hurdle was, how do you put the two together? And I had no idea how to do this. No, not whatsoever. I mean, any of the equipment I'd used in the gravel company did not make any sense to it, to trying to pull this off. So I went out to old Campbell. Anybody know where Campbell's Asphalt used to be in Grove City? Yeah. Ted Farron used to own it. Yeah. There's Mark. I want to say it's Martin, but Martin isn't the right. His lab man. It started with an M. Really super guy. I worked a lot with him on his asphalt mix designs. He was the one that kind of taught me all the sieve sizing and everything that goes, the science that goes into making asphalt. Marvin, his name's Mark. And I went out and I said, Marvin, I got to put these two things together. He goes, what do you mean you got to put them together? I said, I got to mix the sand and this clay together, and I have no idea how to do it. He said, He said, you need an old continuous pug mill mixer. That sounds expensive. Yeah. And Dad doesn't like expensive, so what am I going to do here? And he said, you need an old pug mill mixer. That's what you need. And I said, okay. So he said, he gave me what type to buy, and he'd been in the asphalt industry. Because we used them years ago in the asphalt industry. They're outdated now. He said, you know, we use newer technology. So, and I went out looking for one of these things. Ended up finding two of them in a farm field in Massillon, Ohio. And I drug these things home. They're Korean War era. They are still in use today. One at the plant in Slippery Rock and one at our facility in Hudson, Michigan. And I drag this thing in and I start tearing it apart and screwing around with it. And I put the sand in it and the clay in it, and it would run for about 15 minutes and the whole thing would blow up. And I was like, this isn't working. But you could see when it was running that it was mixing it pretty well, and it looked like it was a really nice looking product. But it wouldn't stay alive. And I go back to Marvin. I'm like, Marvin, this isn't working, and Dad's getting agitated. And so I said, he said, you know, I never thought about it. We lost the lubricity out of the asphalt. And you know, you're building up heat on paddle tips. He goes, we need to tilt those paddle tips so they blend, but they go through at an angle rather than them forcing straight through. It's building up. And it just, the gears couldn't handle it. The bearings couldn't handle it. As soon as we did that, I turned it on one day. I went to lunch. It was running when I went to lunch, and when I got back, it was still running. It's been running ever since. And still the machine. So there's a Grove City connection to how Duraedge was even, you know, all these pieces came together. And so now I had the clay, I had the sand, figured out how to mix it together. Now I had to have a successful job. So we mixed some product and we took it down to Slippery Rock. And I didn't know what I had. I had no idea. I mean, again, I'm still trying to make a return for my father, and you know, he thought this was all just a wild, crazy wild goose chase. I mean, but you know, it's like, hey, I knew there was a need for this, and so we just kept on going. And we put the product into Slippery Rock University, and the phone rings. And it was one phone call after another. I played at Slippery Rock, this coach, that coach. Coach Messer was a big proponent of what we're doing. Coach Faris here in Grove City was a big proponent of this. They just kept giving me encouragement. And one thing led to another, and I got my first major league, or my first professional baseball gig was at the Washington Wild Things in Washington, Pennsylvania. I called all my employees the first night our dirt was on TV. I was a kid last night watching Fenway. I was so excited to see the Red Sox walk it off on the Duraedge dirt. But it's I still get enamored as all get out, especially at playoff baseball time with watching that all come together. And that was our first time on television. That must have been in 2002. We then had a shot at the Philadelphia Phillies' new facility in 2003, but they did not buy it from us for the simple reason it hadn't gone out there too much, hadn't been out and about in the marketplace. So in 2000, that was in 03, and 03 or 04, a person that worked for the Philadelphia Phillies put it into the first affiliated team in Cleveland. It's called the Lake County Captains. That was our first affiliated professional installation, and it was a smashing success. The guys this is the best infield ever. The players loved it. It was the first time it was installed correctly, but we had to figure all this out. We figured out how to make it. Now we were figuring out how to install it, how to water it, and all these. We've evolved into the maintenance side of it as well. But in 2000, that was in 04. In 05, we did our first professional installation with the Philadelphia Phillies. That was a process called Field Saver. There's a little piece of green literature in here, Field Saver. This is how I got into the Major League Baseball. It sounds really great to go and tell us a Major League Baseball field holds about 500 tons of material. That's about what it takes to produce a ball field. 500 tons is expensive to put in, so how we actually broke into Major League Baseball is through this process right here. It's called field saving. I would take variations of these products that I have up here, and I would test the field using my new testing method, and I would say to the groundskeeper, this is where your field's deficient from what I can tell, because as I told you, most people wanted no silt in their field, and I kept telling them that they needed to put a certain amount of silt, but I really wasn't sure how much because I hadn't done the testing yet because it was all trial and error. So we'd sit down, we'd talk about it. These guys have soils degrees. Most of them went to, a college and got an agronomic background. I, of course, had none, so I was kind of bouncing ideas off of them, and it became this collective think tank of guys in their 30s that were the newer generation of groundskeepers that came into professional baseball, and we developed this whole line of products working together, and that's what's really been a lot of fun. But we started with this field savoring process, which means that I tested, I then looked at what their field was, compared it to where I thought it should be, and then we put a product down, we would till it in to the surface, and then we'd sit back and say, did it work? What happened? Well, and that's pretty much how it went. And the first field we did was in 2005 with the Phillies, and the very next day, the team was away for the All-Star break. They came back, boom. The player said to the groundskeeper, what'd you do to the infield? That's usually not a good sign. And what'd you do to the infield? Why? What's the matter with it? They're like, it's unbelievable. It's like a corkboard. It's totally different than when we left. You did something to it. He goes, well, we added a product to it. And they said, well, whatever you did, it's fantastic. So that's been kind of neat how the evolution of this, the players know nothing about the science behind what it is we're doing. And, it's been that positive feedback from these professional players. And, that's kind of how it's taken off and gone. The infielders love it because the ball stays down, that holds moisture longer. There's good traction for the base runners because their cleats will interact with it. And it just, all this information just started flooding in, and it all culminated at the 08 World Series with the Rays and the Phillies, and it was raining, and it's in one of our new training videos we just did. It's raining sideways, and Joe Buck saying, this is horrendous, you can't be playing baseball in this kind of weather, you're neutralizing B.J. Upton's speed, and the guy takes off in a rainstorm and steals second base. Slides in, and a puddle of water that was that deep on the field, no mud, no nothing, and then he scores. And it just blew up from there. And therein lied. I mean, it just, at that point in Major League Baseball, the following year I was standing in San Francisco. Never been to San Francisco in my life, let alone the gentleman who put my product in first in the minor league baseball got the head groundskeeper's job in San Francisco with the Giants. And the manager of the team, the general manager of the team, and all the bench coaches were there. And I was in a room like this, and believe it or not, you guys will know what Enron is. They gave me an Enron coffee cup when I went in the talk. They handed me a coffee cup, and they gave me an Enron. I was like, Enron? That's good. I'm going down in flames. Anyway, so I said to the team, I said, you know, you need to look no further than the World Series last year to understand how this plays. And Bruce Bochy was the manager, and he's kind of a gruff guy. He's just like, that was you at World Series? I said, uh-huh. He gets up and walks away. Like, well, that must not have gone well. But then, you know, one thing led to another, and you know, that was all he needed to hear. And away we went. And they put the infield in, and I was, you know, a month and a half later, I was in San Francisco, you know, painting the town red, literally, with red clay all over the place, and everybody's boat and everything else, because they gave me this little area in the players' parking lot to mix all this. And again, we did this field saver process. We took clay out in big bags. I metered it all together and took their infield mix they actually had and amended it, ran it through a machine, and then put it back into their field. It was the craziest thing you've ever seen, but that's how we got started. And so, you know, the company has evolved over time into a full service baseball. So where we are today, we have these three legacy products, but we actually make all different kinds, and how you build a baseball field is like baking a cake. All right, so you bake the cake. That we play on 3 inches of your cake, right? That's what your infield mix is. We put a 3-inch lift down of our products, compact it, water it, compact it nice and tight, and then we put top dressings on top of it. All of these products are clay products, and somebody asked me today, what do you make in Plain Grove? I don't make any of these products in Plain Grove. I'm just going to show them to you. You can come up and look at them, pass them around. I can explain them when we're done. But the products up front here that are tan, these are montmorillonite clays. They're produced in, there's 3 companies in the country that make these products, actually fire them. Oil dry, who's ever had floor dry or oil dry in their shop? That's what this is, montmorillonite clay. It's fired to 1400 degrees. We use a special color of clay when we make these products, but that's made in Middleton, Tennessee, but they're in Alabama and southern Tennessee. That is where the montmorillonite is, but that's a clay that's fired. So we buy that down there. We've branded all these, are all of our brands that we use and these go on the surface. These products here are expanded shales. A little more durable than the clay particle that's in the bags, but this is something, what we learned, Major League Baseball, after they perfected and realized that this product was what they wanted, the head groundskeeper of the Mets came to me and he said, you know, we need to get more water into the dirt. He said, and I've been playing around with these shales, and he said, but there's nothing good on the market. Do you think you could make something? So this is our first foray into the top dressing. And we take these products, this is a more dense particle, there's higher absorption in these guys. We test the absorption, we test we create a whole set of testing around these products, much as we did with our infield, and they allow moisture down into the surface. So that's all driven at professional level. So all these products have been developed since we created the infield mix. Then the guys come and they say, well, we want something better to put on top. And they keep bringing me problems, and I keep trying to solve them. So these products up here are mound clays. So most people, the pitcher's mound doesn't look very big on a baseball field, but it's about 10 tons of material. It's 18 feet in diameter. They're bigger when you stand next to them than you would think. But you know, they are produced out of a very, very high clay content product. This product is mined in the Mississippi River Valley, right outside of St. Louis. We mine it there, and we put it on a barge, and we float it up to Pittsburgh, unload the barge, and truck it to Plain Grove, and it's all processed in Plain Grove, and then it goes across the country. This product goes to Japan regularly. I'm always amazed that Japanese customers cannot get it ordered in enough time, so we send it to Pittsburgh and fly it there on an airplane. Imagine what that costs. And then these other McKnight clays, this is actually a base mound clay that's made out of our red clay here in Pennsylvania, and this one comes from Albany, from the Hudson River Valley. So you find your best clays, your stickiest clays in the river valleys. But we bring them in from two different, Mississippi and Hudson River. And then these are kind of fun products too. The warning track. Does anybody know what a warning track is on a baseball field? Mm-hmm. Around the whole perimeter of the ball field? Yeah. So the warning track. Pardon me?
The pierogi race.
Yeah, there you go. So it's a roadway. What it serves in a professional ballpark is a roadway. People don't realize there's a ton of events on professional baseball fields. 81 baseball games is just the beginning. Weddings, fantasy batting practices, concerts, you name it, they have it on there. So the San Francisco Giants average 180 to 90 on-field events per calendar year, and plus their 81 baseball games. So imagine that. I mean, sometimes they're doing multiple events on game days. So this warning track takes a beating. So after the infield mix process got going, the guys came to me and said, can you build us a better warning track? Because we need this warning track to be stable, but we also need it to be permeable at the same time. So, there was a lot of effort. This was about, if I did these 15 years ago, this is probably 10 years ago, thought pattern. But these products, we started looking at the gradations of them and figuring out how to make them better. And so this material is made in New Mexico. We work with a lava rock. This is lava. It's called scotia. It's a lava cone. They're mostly, there's nothing around here, but they're all out west. But we took this product and started to work with the sizing of it, and I figured out a way to make it permeable and stable at the same time. So this is what most of Major League Baseball plays on, is the lava rock warning track. We also make a local product here. It's made out of crushed brick. And those are granular products that go around the perimeter of the field. So in addition to all the products that we make, we also are now into consulting services. And I bought a construction company 2 years ago. We do a lot of installation work. That's been the biggest. It's a series of problems, right? You create the product, you create the products, the customers want it. Finding good installers was a real problem. So we bought a construction company. We have 5 crews around the country. And they go and we do the most recent major league field we did was the Texas Rangers new ballpark. That was we installed the infield surface. We don't build the entire field, just do the infield. Whatever's not green grass on the baseball field, that's what we do. So the business has evolved. It's been a lot of fun. You got a little bit of history of Grove City and in it. I had 30 minutes, so look at me. I'm at 32 right now, brother. And there was a big bet in the office that I couldn't stay to 30 minutes, so they all owe me a Pepsi. You can ask me any questions you want. Fire away.
Wow. So they'll look yellow when you see them on TV.
Yeah. What the fields? Yeah. That's what you get. You get a lot. It's like, hey, your dirt doesn't look the same at this ballpark as it does to another. Well, so what's making them look yellow? This is natural colored calcine right here. It's made with as red a clay as they can get. Now some of them are colored. We color these products right here. This is a dyed product. Both the natural color of these shales are gray. So we have a dark brown and a red that we color those with, but we don't color these ones because what we found when they're colored is what you want this for is to absorb moisture. So you need to pull moisture to the surface or absorb moisture during a rain event. This is higher absorbency. So they'll look yellow or tan based upon the top dressing. People say the dirt doesn't look the same. You're not actually seeing our dirt when you watch a pro baseball game. There's a thin layer, and I'm sorry, I was doing the cake thing. The cake is the infield mix portion. The frosting, if you will not, is these granular products. That's the sliding surface, and it creates a layer that interacts between the clay with the player's cleat and the surface of the playing surface. It allows for a sliding surface in it, and it will also absorb moisture. So you're actually seeing the color of whatever the groundskeeper chooses for calcined clay. So if you watch a ball game and the whole home plate's real yellow or tan and the front's dark red, he puts this product up front because he wants to push more moisture into the pit, to the pie up front, because if we're slapping balls down, they want those balls to die. And there's all different ways you can manipulate the field and the playing surface. It's all done through those products.
They're tailoring their field to the
Oh, absolutely. And it's big time in softball now in college. Big time. I mean, if a coach, that's one of the things that makes our surface really cool at the collegiate level is if she's got a team that they want to hit the ball down, and she puts that product down. I say she, it's mostly the college coaches that I'm talking to. You water them in, you rake that product in that ball, clean it all out of there. You want to hit slappers and knock them over their head. Just let it dry out, turn to a concrete brick, switch the products out, you're fine. Just don't water it. So there's all different things you do.
How many colleges? You have 25 major league ballparks. How many colleges would you guess?
I couldn't even begin to tell you. At this point, we have thousands of installations. There's 325 D1 college programs. My biggest competition in Division I college is artificial turf. That's been the biggest problem, is that they're constantly putting in artificial turf surfaces. Major League Baseball is putting in a lot of artificial grass, but I'm very, very happy that they're still installing our product in the infield. So putting it in, so we're put in Miami and Arizona have gone artificial, but they've still continued to use the dirt, which tells me that the players want to play they don't want to play on the artificial turf. We're actually, it was my design in Toronto when the Toronto Blue Jays played on base cutouts like the old Three River Stadium for years and years. And Troy Tulowitzki went up there from Colorado and he wanted an infield, so they dug out this with concrete and we put an infield in for him. That was an interesting project to work on. But they're Major League Baseball plays on the dirt surface. I'm very, very happy for that. So
Which ones aren't you in?
Pardon me?
Which stadiums aren't you in?
The Angels, the Astros, the White Sox, the Rockies, and the A's. We don't do anything with. That's that 4 or 5? That was 5. Yeah, those are 5 that we don't do anything with.
One of them made the playoffs.
Grant, I noticed the mix between the sand and the clay, but there's different percentages. And where does the silt fit in?
So the silt, what ends up happening with the silt is the silt to clay ratio. So this is where I told you I wasn't going to completely go crazy with soil science, but so what ends up happening with sand, silt, and clay, what you're trying to do is there's 3 distinct sizes of the particles. So the sand is 50 micron and up, and the silt is 50 micron to 2 micron, and the clay is 2 micron to infinity. So 2 microns, 2 1,000ths of a millimeter. So you want the clay to adhere to the silt particle. All right, everybody has to have a dance partner. So the clay drums on the silt particle, and the silt then, that silt and clay together go into the void space in the infield mix. But so the silt, we don't test for silt. We look at soils and we coined a term called SCR, and that started in 2008 because I had to have some way of explaining why our products worked better without them needing a slide rule to figure it out. I mean, this is not, you couldn't make this more complicated, but I had started collecting soil samples from 05 to 09 from all over the United States. I test everything the exact same way, and I would get feedback from the people who took care of them. And the feedback, they would say, this play's great, this play's terrible, blah, blah, blah. And I said, I have to figure out a way that scientifically that tells me why one thing's not playing well. And it came to how much silt was in the infield mix. And that's really where I determined, the whole key to a good infield material is the silt and the very fine sand content when we break them down. They're very, very small particles, but I can make a very minute adjustment to the silt content of a field, and it'll go from playing terrible to great. And everybody says, what's just a few percent? But these are very, very minute, very small particles. So when you change something by weight, 4 or 5%, that's 2 micron, it makes a huge difference in the performance of the facility.
So where does the silt come from?
Where does the silt come from?
Yeah.
It's naturally occurring in the soil. So silt you can't create. You can add clay and you can add sand, but the silt you have to, it's naturally occurring. So you're basically taking that product with which you're starting with, and you adjust on either end to get the ratios correct. That's how it works. But you can't add silt. You just, there is no particle that's just silt. You can add clay and you can add sand, but you can't do just the silt. So we take it and test it. That's where all the testing comes in from the beginning. The first thing we do is we look at the fine, very fine sand and the silt content, and then we build the mixes around it. So,
What kind of degrees do your employees have? Do they have?
oh, smart. They're smarter than me, way smarter than me. Just ask Chris and Jody.
Like a geologist?
No, nobody, I mean, Mike, actually, we do have one guy with a geology degree. He's our head of construction, but, you know, you don't really need a geology degree. That's not really we test the soil. We do everything on the testing. So I get soils in from Japan, all around the country. We have 18 locations around the country now. We ship the raw materials out of slippery rock, go out by barge, truck, and rail around the country. And so how we curb our cost is we ship the product out into the marketplace, and then we buy sand locally. So right now we had an employee get on a plane this morning, and he landed at our facility in Glendale, Arizona, and just outside of Phoenix, and he's there working right now. That we buy local products. It's a good way of describing this, you know, whole process. We buy a local clay out there for the recreational market. We test that soil. We look at how much very fine sand and silt are in it. Then I determine how much of my clay and how much sand I'm going to put with it, and we build products for spring training facilities. Because cost is a big deal. I mean, it's expensive to ship. It costs $15,000 to ship clay across the country. So, you know, we try and use as little of our product as possible to make an improvement for the product, but we try and buy sand and clay locally. And it's starting to happen. We do a lot of work in the Pacific Rim, Asia, and Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan. And we've started to receive samples, and it really fries Bill's mind down at the plant when stuff comes in from Hiroshima. And he's a little worried, like, whether it's good. No, I think it'll be fine. Tell her. You know? But so we get these soils in, and they want to know how much of our product to put with it, so that we can make a better mix. Because, you know, we can't send these mixes the whole way over there. The freight costs are too high. So.
Are your corporate headquarters still in Grove City?
Yeah.
And does Grove City High School or college use your product?
Grove City College does, and Grove City High School, yes. Both we have both facilities. Yeah, we've sold product too. The baseball field at the college, and you know, I will tell you that most of what happens at the high school is a labor of love and a bit of a donation. On, you know, I've made darn good sure I had a boy that played baseball up, and you know, he graduated a couple of years ago. But I really try and support Pat Freese Field, and you know, it's a great ballpark.
You do the softball fields too?
The softball fields? Yeah, we do softball, sure. I mean, softball and baseball. And that's it though, just softball and baseball infields with the clay.
What kind of follow-on business do you get off of the stadium?
I say that again?
Once you build a ball field,
The
what kind of follow-up?
Yeah, so the fields last, that's another question I get a lot. I mean, what's the average lifespan? Major League Baseball field, you know, lifespan's probably 7 to 10 years. And, but we renovate them every year. They'll get regraded, but we don't completely change out the materials every year. But it's generally 7 to 10 years you'll get we have to put a whole brand new field in. So with a lot of major league fields that we put in the first time, we're on our second cycle right now. So we're going through another renovation phase.
Well, pitchers' mounds, they seem to get a lot. I mean, they dig their cleats.
Yeah, the pitcher's mounds are maintained after every game. So, but you build them and you find the right products. You build them. They want to keep that maintenance, and you don't want the hole to get very big during the game. So the type of product they use, that's this black clay that comes from this. Major League Baseball plays on this exclusively for all intents and purposes. It's such a sticky clay, and that it'll hold up really well during the game.
Where'd the name of the company come from?
DuraEdge. It started out as Natural Sand Company. Actually, on the front of this was the very first logo that we put together with this, but Natural Sand Company was the original name when we started making the product, and the groundskeepers said, it doesn't make any sense. You sell clay, we don't sell sand. And so we sat down at one of our conferences, and I brought 4 or 5 guys that had used the product, and I said, we need to name this stuff. And what you do with groundskeepers, if you want to name something, is buy them 3 or 4 pitchers of beer and we'll say, and that's exactly what happened. But actually, the name DuraEdge came from 2 guys that said, I've never seen a product that's more durable. And erosion from wind and rain is a big problem on a baseball field. And a baseball field at the professional level is judged by its transitions from the dirt to the grass. They're called lips if you create a lip. So poor quality soils, the groundskeepers are always battling the lip issue. They were constantly going in and washing them out so that they had a smooth transition. So you want to transition from dirt to grass and have no place where the ball, especially on the front edge, the ball can come up and jump on you, right? So one guy said to me, I've never seen durability, and then another guy said I've never seen, so I put Dura down, durability, and then Dura, and then it just kept saying edge, edge, edge. This stuff never moves. And it stays there. I've never seen anything hold an edge like this. So it's called DuraEdge for a reason, and we say it in all of our talks, because it's just named for the type of product that it is. So that's how it was named, and that's what the whole company became after that. Yeah.
Does your father work for you now instead of?
There's not enough real estate. My dad's a great guy. He is fully retired, and he has never he has not really been involved in the business ever. But he's certainly very proud of where we've come. After telling me that he thought, the first day I dumped this clay out, it comes out of the truck in chunks the size of this thing here. And he goes, "What are you doing with that?" I said, "I'm going to make baseball dirt out of it." Oh boy, he wasn't happy. And he thought that I needed to be doing something more gainfully pursued. But so it's been fun to tell him, "Hey, look what we did." But he doesn't work for me.
How many fields do you employ?
Oh, we have thousands of installations now. I mean, and I just did a big, COVID was weird because it stopped travel. I mean, I traveled, my high water mark's 270 days a year. Man, I'm on a plane all the time. That's why I was laughing about the Travelers Hotel. I stay in Marriott's, and they roll out the red carpet at the Marriott when I come, but I pretty much live in them exclusively. And, but I just did a 35-day trip this summer, and I went all over the West, and I even find it amazing now. I was at the University of Puget Sound outside of Seattle, and there's a university that I didn't even know. We have so many employees now that have so many relationships with people all around the country. I don't know any of them, and it started out where it was me. I made it all. I went and sold it all. I had all the relationships, but it doesn't work that way anymore. Most of my job now is really just keeping the logistical side of the business going. With 18 locations and counting, and having to do all the mining, the mine down in Buffalo Township is a lot of work, and so I spend a lot of my time doing the logistics. I have a wonderful staff of people that handle sales, and you can find our product from Seattle to Miami and northern Maine to San Diego, and everywhere in between. Everywhere I go, everywhere I land, there's a ballpark to go visit, or there's a customer. So they're everywhere. I mean, I couldn't even begin to tell you how many there are.
I have a question. I want to stay with your product, but I have another question. I'm a baseball fan, as you know, but I only get to see 2 or 3 stadiums in my lifetime. You've seen all 30.
All 30.
So forgetting about your dirt for just a minute, I'm coming back to it, just stadium-wise, what is your favorite stadium or 2, and where does Pittsburgh rank among them?
Pittsburgh's the prettiest baseball stadium there is. There's no question. With the backdrop, they're all unique. I mean, there's some that are just terrible, but but they're all unique in some fashion or another. I mean, comparing Pittsburgh to Fenway, or I was at Dodger Stadium this year. I mean, just going into Dodger Stadium is just amazing.
He's from California.
Dodger Stadium, but Petco Park is beautiful. They all have their own unique charm, but you know, there's really no old stadiums left.
No.
I mean, the Yankee Stadium, I'll tell you a funny story about the new Yankee Stadium. I went there and the groundskeeper took me into this room. It's about the size of this room right here, but when you walk in, it's obvious, and it's right on the main concourse. It's just a roll-up garage door, and you go into this thing, it's obvious it's climate controlled, and there's these huge filing systems in there. And this little guy is sitting back in the back with round glasses on, and Danny is the groundskeeper, and he said the man's name, and he comes over, and I said, "What is this in here?" And he said, "This is where we keep every contract that was ever signed by the New York Yankees." And I said, "Wow, Joe DiMaggio?" And he went over and he ran the thing down, and he ran his fingers along. He did not pull it out, but he just flipped the manila envelope or manila folder back, and it said DiMaggio Joe. Can you imagine what that's worth? But they built this thing. It's you know concrete bunker. They was like, the big one can go off in New York, and the history of the New York Yankees is going to be which is pretty scary to think about. But yeah, these stadiums are off the charts now. I mean, the things that they have. But Pittsburgh's just a beautiful backdrop. I love it. I love it going there the best. I mean, you know, but they're all.
Is that consensus? Do a lot of people out there agree with you?
Yeah.
You also said artificial turf was one of your biggest competitors.
At the collegiate level, it is.
But are they using artificial turf in the inside?
Yeah, artificial turf companies want to turf everything. They want to,
So-
you know. I mean, you know, it's. I can see. I mean, look. I mean, Grove City College has it. I will be surprised. And it was really hard on me this past year. Slippery Rock University took out their infield and my very first field and put in all artificial turf for $1 million. It cost $1 million to put that in. I tell them I could put you in a brand new field and hire you a guy to take care of it for far less than that. And they got and every 10 years you got to spend another $800,000 to put it in, because those fields only last 8 years, and they're a giant environmental nightmare. But there's a huge amount of Washington money behind them. I mean, if you try and fight them, there's a synthetic turf lobby in Washington D.C. that has massive dollars behind it, and there's nothing you can do. But this stuff is piled up everywhere. It's an environmental nightmare. We started a company called Foremost Sport Group, which is a bunch of groundskeepers that, I mean, we're trying to come up with ways to battle artificial turf. But when you hear somebody like the Dodgers, I mean, Southern California is the greatest environment to grow grass in that there is. I mean, you can't grow grass in Southern California. You're not much of a grass grower, you know. I mean, let's face it. But yet the issue is water. So where will artificial turf pounce on that? They'll pounce on the fact that they don't need as much water, and that's where, you know. But if you can't water the grass, it is going to die. I mean, it's not a, you know, so it's a major problem, and artificial turf is you know, certainly what we talk about most in the company is what to do and come up with a complete solution that is sustainable. The issue really, and COVID has done us no good, we've lost most of our help. I mean, it was not an industry that had real high levels of pay to begin with, and you know, we lost a lot of them during COVID. So trying to find someone, I can build you the nicest baseball field in the world, but if you can't convince the university or pro teams hire people, but even getting them at minor league level to hire the right people is very, very difficult, and finding them is even harder. So we've got, there's tough days coming in our business just to find people to maintain these things. So, and that's what I'm working this year. I'm sponsoring a minor league groundskeepers association meetings at our national conference, and trying to use my leadership ability to help them organize themselves. And they need to go to Major League Baseball and tell them, this is what we're being paid, and this is what needs to happen. And if you want to keep, because we're losing them left and right. I mean, they're going to different jobs anywhere. I mean, I could hire 30 guys in professional baseball right now, not Major League Baseball, but professional baseball. They're groundskeepers that would love to leave what they're doing and come work over here. We have 4 former head groundskeepers, 3 former Major League groundskeepers that work for us now. One was Pirates and Padres. His name's Luke. We have the Texas Rangers, former groundskeeper, and the Baltimore Orioles. These guys, the burnout rate's really high because it's a lot of hard work, So But and the pay's not that good. So hopefully we can get things changed.
When they spread stuff out where it rains, you know, see them take out that bag of stuff.
That's
That's it.
Yeah, that's this. That's your high absorption material I put on there right now. That's a calcine, you know, so it absorbs twice its weight in water. So it'll just pull the moisture right up. So.
Grant, thank you very much. I know from my perspective, I think I know as much about baseball as this guy, but I had no idea that it was so scientific. I just thought you had a great pile of dirt or Ciparron. I knew it wasn't quite that
There's a little more to it than
I didn't
that.
realize it was quite as complicated as that. So congratulations to you to.
But our office is right here at right here
Right.
at the old Murphy building, and we bought that and renovated the upstairs. So we're right here in town. That's the logo that you see there. It's the one that's up in the corner of the building. That's where we call home every day. So.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming. I was away, and all I knew was that, well, he puts the dirt down on a baseball field. I had no idea it was so complicated, or what a tenacious person you
I
were.
hope I didn't make it sound too complicated.
No, I mean, I just.
Give you a little history of how it all started. I
Fascinating.
mean, it's the heart of, if this is a historical society, I figured you'd want to know the story of how the
That was
process
fascinating. I just kept going and didn't really have experience in to come up with the
You
product.
just keep your head down. It's a testament in perseverance. Trust me. I mean,
Yes, it was.
Someday, I mean, in about 2007, when we were cashing in the last of whatever cash we had out of the sale of my father and I sold my father's business in 2006. And that's sort of the footnote to all of this is in 2005 and 6, we were going to get out. The construction materials business was headed towards the 08. Of course, I didn't know what was actually coming in 08, but I sold our construction materials business in March of 06 and took off on this on my own. And my father and I went like that. He went one way and I went the other, and so I was left trying to put this all together. And yeah, there were a couple of days there in 7 and 8 when you're like, am I really going to make my living selling baseball dirt? But somehow we made it through it.
Now, what about your children? What did you get, 4 hours of sleep when you were working for your dad and working on all this?
This was nights and weekends. Yeah.
Grant, what about
Well, thank you.
are your children grown up to the point where they're involved in this business or no?
My 2 oldest sons, I have a 26-year-old, and he does not really have he had some learning disabilities, so he doesn't really have the cognitive want to be in this. And then I have a 24-year-old who's currently in California working on one of our construction crews in Sacramento as we speak. He looks like he's moving to the Utah facility. We have 3 main offices here in Grove City, and then I have one in Vero Beach, Florida, and one in Ogden, Utah, north of Salt Lake. So he's going to go work in the Salt Lake facility and do a tour of duty. But he's 24 and he needs to find his way.
Yeah.
So it's basically a forced march. I'm not going to tell you. He needs an activity adjustment. But then I have a 22-year-old son who's a senior at Santa Clara University in San Jose, and he certainly has the aptitude and the business side of it. But I think he's graduating early, and he came home and he sat around, and it's like, I think he was like, am I going to offer him a job? And I was like, no, I'm not offering you a job. And I said, you've got to go out. He's got to put 5 years in on his own. And then Quinn's 16, and he's all over the board. So your guess is as good as mine.
Well, think back to when you joined your dad and that'll
Yeah.
give you the answer.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, thank you. That was really fun.
Thank you.
I can answer any questions individually that you have. And you can feel free to take those.